Okay. We have bitrate. I think we're good.
We're good. We're good.
Yep. We should be
All right.
live.
Yeah, I see you moving around. So I'll tell you that. I'll tell you this great story about Chip Morningstar. I used to work at this company called Communities.com in the early 2000s that Randy and Chip worked at. Chip was like the head tech guy, and I forget what Randy was doing, but they had another CEO. So an interesting thing about Chip Morningstar is he's kind of the guy that coined the term avatar to talk about a character in a virtual environment. Borrowed from the term avatar, which I believe is Hindu. And so, but so like at the company that Chip Morningstar is working at, they get the brilliant idea that some terms were like too complicated for people. Keep in mind it's like in the middle of the .com boom, and so at the company where the guy who created the term avatar is working at, they decide they're not going to use the word avatar, and they have like essentially like the equivalent of a swear jar. Like every time someone said the word avatar or a couple other kind of like forbidden words that they thought was too complicated for users, you had to like throw in like a quarter or something like that. I mean, it wasn't intended to kind of be a major penalty. It's supposed to be kind of a funny thing. Oh, look at somebody said the bad word. But it just struck me as so fucking dumb because we have Chip Morningstar here, like the guy who invented this term. And it's not like he did a huge marketing campaign to make everybody use this word. Like it just kind of spread naturally.
Nice. And
like, not too surprisingly, the company went out of business because this was like this was the mind frame they were in. That the idea of the idea of this word being too complicated was like a major driving factor for them.
For the company as a whole.
Yeah, for the company as a whole. Yeah.
Okay.
Essentially they're trying to dumb things down for for the users. But it was one of those things like it's not that the users are too stupid. So you're just not. And like to be fair, they were trying some really ambitious stuff that just wasn't holding on. I mean, they're basically trying to write a whole chat client in JavaScript, which a decade later was like a brilliant thing to do, but at that time was like the hell are we doing?
I have a very important question to ask though.
Hmm.
Do you want to date my avatar? She's a star.
Something Tenkins Bank.
Yeah. Thanks. Oh my god. Yeah, like send those guys that video.
Well, I mean, like,
and tell them
the company's way out of business now.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean,
the individual who was saying that though, send him a video, that music video, and say yes, this is much too complicated for us to understand.
Right. But it's just like Jar was asking what did he think of it. Like Chip just kind of kept his head down. I mean, he wanted to work on tech, and he like I said, like doing the whole client in JavaScript was pretty crazy. At the time, but like it was a very exciting thing. I mean, Chip was kind of like the driving force behind using JavaScript for the chat client. But
wait, you can use a chat client in JavaScript?
Again, remember this is like early 2000s. Like like nowadays, yeah, like sure, like kids are writing JavaScript chat clients, but like this is back.
No, I gotcha. Back before it was conceived.
Well, or back before it was like even technically a good idea,
right?
Just because there's there wasn't as much standardization and tech stability.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
Yeah, and so like the really interesting thing is that I worked the company I worked at basically acquired this chat program called the Palace, which some of your real old school people out there might remember. And they had which was basically like a downloadable client. Had a downloadable OSC client, and like so basically kind of what they were trying to do is they created a JavaScript client for the Palace, but then they decided the Palace was like too outdated, I guess, and so they they wanted to kind of do this whole new thing called a Passport. They're calling it Project Passport internally.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of just a terrible idea all over the place, to be honest. I don't know. It's kind of a little look at that, like business decisions. They kind of like, and I think this is kind of one of the problems you run into when non-tech people kind of run a tech company. Like oh, this thing is too complicated for me. It's like, well, I mean, and to be fair, like us programmers do kind of tend to go off in the weeds and get a little tunnel vision on stuff. Like, of course, everybody understands how to coordinate JavaScript and
of course
like,
everyone can think in calculus.
Right, exactly. Of course, everybody thinks like a programmer and thinks logically and understands thread parallelization. Duh.
Yeah, that actually makes me think of little thing in Star Wars Galaxies where you could set like when you went to name something. Like something that you crafted or your house or whatever, you could actually insert hexadecimal code to color it. But you had to either know hexadecimal or have a copy and paste of it to do it.
Right.
And out of everyone who's playing that game, how many people actually know hexadecimal?
Right.
I didn't.
Right. I mean, I understand hexadecimal, but I don't know how the color chart memorized. So.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, basically, you're gonna have to have people that do that. But yeah, it's kind of just silliness. So I guess we got enough people here now. We can at least start the topic. I'm probably get started on talking about the. Go ahead, say it. I know you want to say it.
Sure. No, I don't. You're the one that wants me to say it.
That's why you hate yourself in Ed. Okay, I'll do it. So, Malgrim, what's the difference between PVE and PvP?
Oh my god, I hate you so much. No, the secret is, though, I secretly love it. I just make it sound like I hate it.
Oh, you tricked me, huh? reverse psychology. Yep.
Okay, so let's get on topic for once.
What? When did this start?
Good question.
Anyway.
So, I don't know. I don't know how I got to thinking about this, but I was just thinking about, what drives a game designer to choose whether they want to make their game a PvE game or to include a PvP game. I guess I was thinking about Diablo a little bit because, I remember Diablo 2 had a really good PvP drive to it, but Diablo 3 has next to no PvP in it whatsoever.
Right.
And yeah, I guess I was thinking about that.
I think that to start, for the people that don't know, who aren't all hip on the terminology, PvP is player versus player, which is generally where you have people kind of competing against each other. Tends to appeal to the killer mindset, Bartle's killer mindset. A lot of competition, a lot of kind of feeling sports-like. Where PvE is player versus environment, which is basically everything else in the game, where you're fighting against monsters or the environment or solving puzzles or doing something else. And in MMOs, this tends to appeal to the achiever mindset, the Bartle achiever, where they want to demonstrate mastery, they want to kind of earn something over time, kind of that type of mentality. And a lot of old school games, like a lot of older games, like Muds, in Bartle's original Mud, X-Mud, there was PvP and PvE, combined into the game together. in even in early MMOs, like Ultima Online or the Meridian 59, the game I worked on, a lot of times you had PvP that was part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Meridian 59, even kind of, I mean, it wasn't designed explicitly as a PvP game, but that slowly became the focus because it had kind of a good system for that, but it still had kind of PvE aspects of it as well. And we even had like a PvE focused server called Sacred Haven. Yeah, but that was always kind of a lot less popular, like a one out of 10 servers when 3DO ran the game. So the and so like along the way things changed to where like PvP and PvE kind of really started becoming more divergent, and until you get to the point like what Malgrim said, like Diablo 2 was built around the time when kind of the mindset was, oh, we can do both at the same time. Diablo 3 comes around and that's a lot more focused on, oh, we need to do one or the other and do it well.
Right. Yeah, you can kind of see that through the lifespan of World of Warcraft too, because when WoW first started, when I played in vanilla and Burning Crusade, like the PvP servers were the super popular servers to be on.
Right, right.
Because you had the overworld PvP, and you could protect, high levels could protect the low levels trying to level up, or gank the other team, the other factions, low levels. It was a big whole ordeal.
Right.
But over time, it got less popular to the point where, in order to flag for overworld PvP, you have to enter a separate instance in the game world.
Right. Ultima Online was kind of infamous about this, where they, like the game was originally, the concept of Ultima Online was supposed to be like very much a kind of a world simulation almost in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Where people were living in the world, and kind of the design philosophy at the time was that PvP was a large part of this. Like people would come into conflict. You would, and like the most vociferous advocates of this were actually kind of the RPers, funny enough.
Oh, really?
Because they believe that, basically, in their eyes, having proper PvP was important, kind of role play out conflict.
True. Yeah, true. I did have that in Star Wars Galaxies too. In my Jedi Order, one of my characters, master trials to become a Jedi Master in our RP community was to escort someone through one of the PvP zones.
Ah.
Now that I think about it, which exciting. It was crazy.
Right. No, that and that's kind of one of the potentially interesting things is PvP is has a lot more spice to it, but like I said, we've definitely gotten to the point, and so going back to Ultima Online, what happened eventually was that the people that were really good at PvP basically drove off the people that weren't very good at PvP. And the term they put it, they called them wolves and sheep.
Mm.
And so, the wolves needed the sheep in order to kind of continue doing what they want, but sheep don't really particularly like being sheep.
Right.
Nobody wants to, and kind of the way the game was set up, logically was that, you could spend 5 hours going out and mining resources and gathering stuff to take back to town to craft, or you could spend half an hour looking for somebody who spent that 5 hours, gank them, take their stuff, and go do the same thing.
Right.
And so in that type of world, essentially it made sense if you were good at PvP to go and PvP other people. But the person that just spent 5 hours for essentially nothing is not exactly going to appreciate that experience.
Nah. I can only imagine, because I've been playing Final Fantasy 11 a lot lately. I can only imagine what it'd be like because that's another game that has no PvP in it.
Right.
I can only imagine doing my fishing grinding to make gil off vendors just to get ganged halfway back to town.
Right. somebody else fully profiting from all your work there. Like, it just became very frustrating. So even Ultima Online, which was a pretty hardcore game, like I said, their original concept was, this is a living world. There's gonna be consequences. Suck it up and deal with it.
Right.
Like even they basically changed the game to essentially to mirror. They created basically two worlds named after the moons in the Ultima lore, Trammel and Feluca. And they infamously said, "Oh, we're not just mirroring things. It's not a mirror," but it was a mirror.
Right.
Essentially what they were trying to do is they were trying to kind of like not piss off their hardcore player base.
Trying to keep everyone happy to some degree.
Right. But essentially, they looked at the numbers, saw that they were losing players, and were like, "Nah, we're gonna go over here and do this."
Because that's what matters at the end of the day.
Well, business model. They make money off of a subscription, and somebody who gets frustrated and stops subscribing is not playing the game, not paying for the game either. So,
right.
They're looking to maximize subscriptions, and and there was a lot of really interesting kind of discussion, design, analysis from this because, again, at the time it was, the terminology was, like wolves and sheep. The wolves kind of wanted the sheep. Like wolves don't really like preying on other wolves because, well, they actually know how to fight back. And you get kind of different types of PvPers. You get the type that want something more sportsmanlike. You get the people that just kind of want to stroke their own ego and just go kill other people randomly. Listen to them scream and and laugh while looting their corpse. So
that's what Rust is for.
We see like little bits and pieces of this in other games. So, PvP, kind of looking a little bit at some design considerations for PvP. Like, persistent world PvP, tends to be kind of terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Like if there's serious consequences, then you damage your character if you die. Like you don't want to die. Like you will do anything you can to avoid dying. But like if that's if killing the other person is how you count victory, well that's what you want. You don't want the other person necessarily avoiding that type of thing. So and so like a lot like we have PvP in a lot of other games. For example, first-person shooters, MOBAs, and whatnot. But what's interesting to look at these things is like essentially they have a temporary element to it.
Yeah, I don't know what's causing all that damage. Like it's been happening to me ever since they updated, and I'll just like randomly drop.
Yeah, like I noticed like everybody in that area just dropped all of a sudden.
Crazy. Anyways.
But yeah, and so the ideal is you kind of want to have it so that the idea that you want is you want people kind of to PvP and PvE together. The reality is that generally kind of people most modern MMO players really don't like PvP, and trying to kind of encourage them to do it kind of builds resentment more than anything else, to be honest. Because because Star Wars Galaxies was a little bit like that. Like, some of the philosophy of Star Wars Galaxies was Raf Coster, who was a lead designer on Ultima Online, spent a lot of time on Star Wars Galaxies, and was trying to kind of make it so that, to get it so that people kind of wanted to opt into PvP.
Right.
And part of that was kind of the Rebel versus the Imperial setup. And so, kind of the idea was that, people would join sides and factions. The problem you run into, of course, is that, when you have two factions, they tend to get imbalanced pretty quickly, and the imbalance tends to exacerbate.
The funny thing with Star Wars Galaxies, there's actually a secret third faction.
Yeah.
It's called Neutral.
Right.
It's a joke. But no, like people could choose to not opt in, and then they could actually temporarily flag one way or the other.
Oh, really? Huh.
With a minor internal cooldown. I think it was like that you had to wait like 3 hours from flagging for one faction before you could flag to the other.
That makes sense.
But yeah, neutrals could, in theory, still participate in PvP regardless of which side they wanted to be with. Like they could go one way or the other. It's just I don't think they could actually collect
Pick mine.
Or
not.
I was looking at my screen. They just couldn't get faction points because they weren't actually part of a faction.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because like EverQuest 2 had kind of something similar where they had kind of they had two major factions, Kanos, which was kind of the good side, and what was the other city? Freeport, which was the quote evil side. Like people, of course, people would probably try to hang me for using those terms.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know. Trying to describe good and evil to it, but I was on the evil side, of course.
Of course, obviously.
I mean, it was like the two factions weren't very segregated. Like I think originally you couldn't play together, but eventually it was kind of like the Alliance and Horde in World of Warcraft. But eventually they kind of dropped a lot of that stuff because it was like, people just want to play with their friends, no matter what faction they're on. But anyway, so the point was that you could switch factions, which required you to leave your old faction and then do a small faction grind to join the new faction. And while you were doing that, you were neutral, and like some people were like very much like, oh, I want to stay neutral.
Right.
Even though they really got no benefit out of it. There was like and like the developers had set up like a little kind of like degenerate city, like it wasn't really a place to go hang out and be social like the cities were, but like people kind of like just like it was a total. It wasn't even an RP thing. It was just like a total like I just want to be cool and unique and be in this temporary third faction, but I want to make it permanent.
That's interesting. Yeah, that was the nice thing in Star Wars Galaxy that like the factions weren't segregated outside of PvP. Other than one raid that came out, near the end of the game's life, where you could battle at Hoth. You could do you could do the raid for the Battle of Hoth, and that was faction specific. Other than that, though, I'm trying to think where else. If you went into the PvP zones, obviously.
Right.
But then the only other thing I can think of is Kessel Space, which was technically a space PvP area, but no one actually PvP'd there. Because that's where the high level space was to farm. So
there was kind of a kind of gentleman's agreement not to fuck with each other in there.
Right. Because there's just no point to messing with each other. I mean, there was other space PvP areas, but Kessel was like the big open world area. Yeah, I mean, most people didn't give a crap. Like the Imperials had like the Imperial side of Kessel, and then the Rebels had the Rebel side of Kessel, and they just kind of stuck to their sides.
Right.
Which let's hear. Jajar is telling us something. Blizzard's confused about what they want. Every so often they try to renew the war, quote unquote, with limited success.
Right.
I mean, Blizzard's just honestly, my opinion is Blizzard's gonna do what Blizzard wants to do. There doesn't have to be a rhyme or reason to it.
Right, and yeah, like the the factions in World of Warcraft is really interesting because they kind of straddle this kind of like no man's space of PvP and PvE. Like there's really little PvE benefit to the things. And like PvP in World of Warcraft, it plays a pretty minor thing, and then like really, like But like one of the interesting things that the factions do in World of Warcraft is give the players identity.
Mm-hmm.
It gives them a kind of a tribe to belong to, and so kind of the same way where people will cheer for sports teams, they really get no benefit out of the sports teams winning or losing, besides kind of like the intangible pride and bragging rights or whatnot. It's kind of the same thing. Like people get very you want to start like you want to start flame war, like try calling the Horde evil.
Right. Or just say the Horde
yeah.
sucks,
Right. Exactly. Like the and people kind of like get all sorts of huffy and defensive. What? Just because we have the Forsaken that want to murder everybody and turn them into undead doesn't mean we're evil.
Well, I actually thought that was really interesting because when I went back to play WoW for some streaming stuff, I talked to my streaming friends, and they're like, "Oh, so which side are you?" I'm like, "Does it matter?" Like,
oh yeah, it does. Like,
yeah, it really does, because I used to play Alliance, back when I used to play hardcore, but I recently went Horde just because I want to play a Demon Hunter, but I don't want to play a Night Elf again. Right. So my option was to play Blood Elf. So they're like, "Oh, so you're not a line, you're not a follower, you're not a believer." I'm like, "Whoa."
Right.
Hold on.
Right. Yeah. Like I played Alliance because that's what all my friends were playing.
Right.
Yeah, I played on this server and on Alliance side because that's what my friends were playing, and it was like, if they had picked Horde, I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna pick this other thing. It really didn't matter to me like which side is playing, but like people like, and so like arguably you get a little bit of there's some potential PvP aspect to it, but I think if you really want to look at like a much more watered down version of it, you could look at the grand companies in Final Fantasy 14, where like originally kind of that was your kind of PvP team. But even then, like they added in freelancing as an option in the PvP area. So
just because queues were so bad.
Right. Well, and sometimes you just don't want to be on the twin batters.
I honestly would say 11's version of the Grand Companies, the Nations, was a kind of a better mix of PvE and PvP because they would be able to conquest in zones, and like depending on who the most active nation conquesting in those zones are, which I mean conquesting was really just having a buff from your nation, and you just wore it while you leveled, and that would give you that would let you get crystal drops, and it would give you conquest points. And at the end of the week, whichever team had the most conquest points in each particular zone, that zone would be owned by that nation for the next week. So, in a sense, that created a PvP environment through PvE content.
Right. This is basically kind of indirect PvP. Pick Adam.
Does it even matter?
Yes, I gotta get a void trace. It's, and that's kind of the interesting thing about when you start talking about PvP too, is like there's a lot of different types of PvP. You kind of direct, indirect, like economic PvP. Like some of the people that like sell stuff on market boards in World of Warcraft were pretty serious about like making their money and competing against other people.
Oh my goodness.
Right.
I turned flower picking into a PvP sport when I played WoW. Because when you had access to flying and you were a druid and you could pick flowers without dismounting, everybody hated you.
Right. And you could basically just instantly pop back into your flight form and where other people had to mount and whatnot. Yeah.
Right, and we talked about in a previous stream about PvP via proxy of administrators.
Right. Right.
I'd have people report me to the GMs for suspicion of botting because they wanted to get rid of me because I was taking up all the herbs in the zone.
Right. Yeah, no, that's yeah, kind of Warcraft having kind of the competitive nodes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting kind of seeing you see 14 where they have exactly the opposite where all your nodes are kind of individualized. You're not competing with anybody.
I think they took away competitive nodes in one of the more recent.
Yeah.
Because everything in WoW is phased now.
Right.
Literally everything is. It's actually really hard to actually interact with other people because of it. Because you're basically in your own little world in the overworld now.
Right.
Except for when you fight for PvP and blah blah blah.
Right.
But so that solves the PvP issue in World of Warcraft, but it also makes the PvE experience of being in the overworld kind of lonely and turns it more into a single player experience.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of that's been kind of a continuous issue with World of Warcraft, is that they've kind of had this relentless drive toward being essentially a glorified single player game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was kind of one of the things that was very appealing to World of Warcraft at the beginning was that you could solo everything alone, whereas the big game previous to that was two big games previous to that were World EverQuest and Dark Age Camelot.
Right.
Which were very group heavy games. There was a big hue and cry against the concept of forced grouping. And so when World of Warcraft was released and you had the ability to just go out there and do your thing, for the most part. I mean,
for the occasional dungeon.
Right, or not, but not even that. People could could basically get to max level without dungeons. There's no MSQ to force you to do the dungeons, really.
Right.
And so so then you had the lovely issue of especially the classes that get solo really really well and or less gear dependent like hunters. You'd get the hunter to get to max level, and I had no idea how to play their character in a dungeon. But they're max level now, and they're gonna do high level content. That's dungeon, so good luck whoever gets them as a party member.
And now we have dragoons. Mechanics. What's that? Okay, I completely lost track where we are on our little list here.
I think we're mostly kind of still on the introduction thing, kind of going over kind of overview of PvP and PVE and different games and whatnot. So
I gotcha.
But yeah,
I lost.
Professionals. We're professionals, kids. And so I mean, and that's kind of another really interesting thing is that PVE is something you can kind of do alone, where PvP really needs other people. And so in some ways, games like World of Warcraft and Star Wars: The Old Republic really kind of focused on essentially making the game kind of a single player experience with other people around, and the design philosophy behind this is going back to Bartle's Achievers, which keep in mind they want to have mastery over the world. Well, if you master the world, it's better if you can show off that mastery to other people. So having other people that can appreciate your having other people that can essentially appreciate your mastery, but they don't get in the way of advancement is kind of the perfect situation.
Or in the case of WildStar, you master the world by outlasting the game.
Oh, sad.
I'm sorry.
Now I has a sad.
Everyone has sad after playing WildStar. Which is really sad because I actually liked that game. I enjoyed it.
I didn't like it. I played the beta and it was just like too much.
Oh, I played it much later in its lifespan after it got put on simmer.
Uh,
I guess would be the way to put it. It got
Right.
less extreme.
right. Like it was definitely like trying too hard. It reminds me of that Simpson episode where like the old people kind of sitting around a table like we gotta appeal to the youth. So we're gonna make this extreme cartoon character that nobody's gonna like.
Extreme.
Exactly. And like Wildstar felt like that. I mean, like obviously it had its fans and whatnot, but like just for me, it was like, no.
Honestly,
Yeah,
I just like the class systems.
well, I mean, there's a lot of things I wanted to like about it.
Right.
The stuff that got patched out afterwards, of course. But like I came into it really wanting to like it because like we talk about the Bartles 4 types a lot. Like they had like the professions which we're supposed to kind of talk to are we're supposed to kind of appeal to different the different Bartle play styles. The problem, of course, is like it was the Bartle play styles through all of it was through the lens of an achiever.
Right.
Exploration was a checklist that you had to go down and explore everything. It's like that's not what explorers do. Explorers do not do a checklist.
Right. I liked the professions out of that more for what they did functionally than what their intended ideology was.
Right.
Like I had a character that was an explorer, and basically what it allowed me to do was to run through zones faster because it had like these little racing check flags.
Right.
And the more you ran through them, the faster you'd get.
Right.
So like that just helped me get from point A to point B faster.
Mm-hmm.
So like I enjoyed that because it was just like convenience. I didn't really care about completing the objectives for it. I just used it to get through leveling zones faster.
Right.
And like the settlers would have buffs available. One of them was an experience buff.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, and so it's like things like that. Like like I guess like is a case of great ideas, kind of like middling execution.
Right.
Or I mean, like some of the stuff they did very well, but like just the whole attitude, the whole hipper than thou attitude, just kind of like was a little too much for me, and and then the relentless focus on raiding, which like kind of a lot of people complained about, where they really kind of just had a hyper focus on raiding at the high end.
Like everyone.
Well, I mean, raiding is kind of an interesting PVE thing because it tends to be kind of referred to as what's called aspirational. You see the raider and all their kind of cool gear, doing cool things. On their giant mount that only drops in the raid. Wearing their sparkly particle-filled gear that only drops in the raid. And like people are like, oh, I want to do that, and so they like they'll play the game harder and stick with the game longer because they want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas PvP kind of has exactly the opposite. When you run into someone who's really good at PvP, you generally get your ass kicked, and you're like, this sucks.
Right. I don't know. I just had like this thought just pop up in my head randomly, as they do.
Mm.
Where I'm like, I wish a raid in 14 would just give you a unicorn outfit. No particular reason. For some reason, I really want it. Just because the game it does get a little ridiculous sometimes. They just recently released, the fat cat mount and.
Right. Yeah, like I've been running around a little bit with that. Like, yeah, that thing has the creepiest meow. Like when, it's just like kind of like weird artificial, like like no cat should make this noise type of sound when people mount and unmount.
And I just kind of want them to make a summoner outfit that is literally just a rainbow unicorn,
right?
With a unicorn horn. Like just if you're gonna go ridiculous, just do it.
Crank that shit up to 11, huh?
Right. And just to hear the unanimous from everybody.
Right.
And just use that as a threat. Just like, yeah, we could do this.
Yeah. We'll do more of these if you don't shut up.
Yeah.
Yoshi P, please look forward to it.
Looking forward intensifies.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my goodness. I would just love for the developers just to like, fire shots at the community for all their, complaining over, little things. Just be like,
right.
You want something to complain about? We'll give you something to complain about.
Right.
Anyways, I gotta follow. Anyways, do you have any finishing words for this segment?
No,